I'm going to lean this guy forward just a little bit, and that's going to put all that wax up. Now again, make sure that you warm, especially this tool, up really good, that it's nice and warm, and then we're going to scoop up that green color of crayon, and we're just going to come in. Remember how fast that kind of goes if it's really warm. And we're just going to put some grass in, especially around the bases of the trees, some down here. I need to stop and warm him up again, and I think one more time, and that's going to finish him, and we'll be done with that color. We'll move on to our light green color. So I put my liner work on. I think I'm done with that. I don't want to overdo it. I don't know if you can overdo it. It's not too bad. But remember, we wanted to clean this out really, really well. I need to get a new paper towel going here, just so while it's nice and warm, if we go to the next color, we don't have that color in our wax liner. And I'm going to go ahead and run this through, get rid of that is built up in the tip, and wipe that off, because if you don't wipe it off and you pull it back, then it's back in the tip. So we've got him clean for next time, and we're going to go to our yellow green, and there's green yellow, which actually is this color. So be careful when you're looking at the two. This to me is more bright spring, and that one's a little bit more yellow to me. So we're going to melt our crayon again on our melter here, and I've worked out as much color as I think I needed to. We're going to check it, kind of make sure that we don't have too much. That looks good. And we're going to add one more layer, and this will be our final time with our texture brush here. You only really get about 2 or 3 really good pounces before you need to reload your texture brush. So if you're doing it and you think 5 or 6 times, you're not getting any wax on there. And I'm going to reload it one more time here. We're almost done. And then if you really clean your texture brush out after we're done, trying to get this little guy right here, make sure that our trees look like they're coming out of the grass, not floating. And I think we have that good. And if you think it needs to do any more, you can do some more. But see how nice that's already looking. The one thing I do not like is the trunk being so wide up here, but by the time we get our leaves on, you're not going to be able to tell anyway, so that is not a big deal. I'm going to clean my texture brush out, and we're going to practice leaves. So I read my instructions and I realized I put a little bit of brown into this as well. Of course, I'd already cleaned out my texture brush and everything. That's perfect for the last color. It is not very much at all. It's kind of here and there. Again, you may use it over areas that you think need to have a little bit more, especially these little guys, because they're not going to get any leaves. They're background, so you would only see the smaller little spots. You wouldn't see individual leaves. So I'm not even going to do it up there. I'm just going to do down on that one spot on that tree where I thought it was kind of naked, and a little bit at the top, not much, just here and there. Don't make it muddy. Don't make it muddy. If you start to do things just because you should be doing them and you're making it muddy, stop. Always stop. Okay, I think that's really nice. I think that actually gave me a little bit more depth. And I want to talk about when you're using the texture brush, while I start to clean it here, don't ever do more than 3 colors. Because if you start to do more than 3 colors, you start to muddy it. So think about that when you're working with your colors, if you're working on the background of a gourd or even trees or anything like that. So on texture, 3 colors max is all I would ever do. And a lot of times I just do usually 2. I usually don't do just 1, but you can do it any way you want to. Make it yours. I always say, if I didn't do what people told me I couldn't do, I wouldn't be here today. So always try something if you told it won't work and see what it turns out like. Okay, let's go ahead and get that finished, and we're gonna now really start on our leaves. So I've just going to use some of my wax that I used before. I'm going to use my green. It's a little bit thicker than my light green or yellow green. Each color of crayon has a different makeup to it. Usually the darker the colors, the thicker they are. And the lighter colors, the thinner they are, except for white, who thinks he's a thick color. So if you were using the light green, you'd want to make sure you stirred it real well. And I have enough crayon in here. I finished just putting my whole crayon that it covers above my tool, the ball on the ends. Let me show you, got that nice and clean, so it comes up to there. So you want to make sure that you have it past the ball and past that little dent kind of thing, because this little drip is actually what you use to make your stroke. And if you were doing the regular strokes, it's a little bit different. You would just keep them and hold them longer, pull them all the way down. So we're doing little tiny leaves, and we may switch to a smaller tool here. I'm using number 1 right now. We may go to a 0, but we're just going to tap our tool down at the bottom so that we know we've reached the bottom of the wax. We're going to set this stroke, and we're going to pull up as we set it down so that it's coming to a point, unlike our other stroke over here. And kind of the faster you do it, the better it turns out. Don't overthink it. And this is a tree, so every leaf can be different. Don't worry about right or wrong. And don't worry about taking them off. If you really bugs you, take it off. But otherwise, just leave it around. As you can see, I'm kind of pulling to the right a little bit, and you can turn your gourd around. You want your leaves going all kinds of different directions, so we want to make sure that we do that. All of them need to go different directions, not just the same way. And the other way, if you're having a hard time with that, somebody's told me that they like it easier. If they come, they tap it, make a dot, and then pull it to the side, that works better for them. So if that method works better for you, do it that way. Just try both of them. Get comfortable with your leaves. Once you're good with that, we're going to put our red crayon, the whole thing, into one of our melting pots. So I'm going to put red into my wax melter, and again, remember we're using Crayola crayons only. Any other brand is a lot thinner, a lot waxier. Your leaves would be bigger and runnier. So Crayola is always the way to go. Don't do any second brands. You can always get them at back to school time. That's a great time to get them. This year they're on sale for 50 cents a box. So you can buy you several boxes for that price. I did want to talk to you. Let's get this out of the way. I always get this every time, that there are no red aspens. And I hate to tell you this, folks, but being from Colorado, there are red aspens. There's not a lot of them, and it's usually the minerals in the ground that make some of them red. So you usually see a certain area only that is red. So there are red aspen. We're going to do, actually, on this tree, 4 layers. We're going to do a layer of leaves. We're going to come in and texture over it with our yellow, our dandelion, and then we're going to come and do a second layer of red leaves, and then we're going to do some dandelion leaves. So know that we're going to put 4 layers to get this look. Otherwise, if we'll put up a tree picture to show you how sparse they kind of are. So when we're working on our trees and we're doing our leaves, you want to think about which way the branches and they would be growing out from. So your tips of them should always kind of be headed that direction. I usually start at the top and work down. You can do however you want. I've decided, after playing around with my gourd shard, that's always a great thing to have, is broken pieces of gourds that you can play with. I am going to use the number 0 tool, the larger side. And we're just using the red Crayola crayon. And I'm going to, like I said, start up at the top and kind of work my way down. When you're doing these leaves, you have to reload every time, or you will not get the same consistency. You will have less. So it's always real important. And this texture we have underneath is a little bit different than you're used to probably kind of working on top of, because your gourd is smooth. So think about that. But see how the one layer is one layer. You can see through it. You can see the space. We don't want them so much touching in this time. Now say there's a branch. So if I was going to stick on the branches, I'd come down with leaves and kind of do that way and that way. If you don't like it, if it really bugs you, nobody's going to see it. Got 4 layers, people, but you can pull it off with your hobby knife. You're your worst critic. So this is the most textured tree that I do out of all of my trees. It's kind of one of the most favorites, so maybe that's kind of why. We don't want to make this so symmetrical, and I kind of have it a little bit symmetrical right now. I'll show you what I mean. We've got this guy coming out at different lengths and layers, coming down a little bit here and there, so we don't want him like a straight triangle. So we want to think about that when we're putting that on. Like this one and this one will be separated by our going one direction and then going another direction. And if you need to pull that stroke away from you or to the side, just turn your gourd, make it work for you. Don't worry about getting it, turning it as much as you need to. Really can help you. And try not to put them so evenly on the limbs. I need to work on that. I am my worst one to tell you that, and then I do it. So, and make sure that we've got some that come down the middle. And so I am just going to turn the video camera on, keep on working here, and get this first layer done. some areas that I want to kind of come back and put a little bit more into, just to kind of define that area. Otherwise, I think we're kind of losing that. So we're going to come and bring these more towards a point on some of these and just bring them out further. That guy got a lot of ones. I don't know, it looks like a bird in there. If we want to just leave him or if we need to take him out. So that's something to think about. If you had not put the liner on, you could have put the texture brush and all the colors on, and then you could have heated it slightly like we did, and just have the texture be smooth instead of rough. So know that you kind of have those options that you could do. See how that looks better, but I think we need to even bring it down. Let's just make it come over here. I know we don't have any branches over here, but by the time we get done with them, you won't know that we don't. Make sure you keep your hand out of the colored ones, and I need to fix those too because they're just kind of globs. That's what it would look like if you got your hand in the way of them when they were still drying, before they were completely dry. So bring those around. And I'm going to kind of want to bring that out just a tad. I'm kind of not getting those leaf shaped here. And I can tell I need to stop and add some more wax to my red. One of the other things that you can do if you only had the one red crayon is you can kind of tip it so that the thicker wax is on here. This is the one time that we use a lot more wax than normal because we're filling up this tree. So I still think we need to bring this guy out some more. I still think we need to bring this guy down some more. So I'm not turning my leaves were running the other direction because I had the angle of the gourd turned, and I was trying to get him to go a different direction than what the angle of the gourd was. So if you're having issues with that, that may be why. So make sure you're kind of always should have more of a flat surface so your wax isn't really trying to run on you. Get those anchored in there. Bring this guy out. One. Don't forget, we're going to do another layer on these, so we're going to have more layers so we can fill it in more as well. But we kind of want to have that basic shape with our base. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit here. Okay, we're getting that better. And we just want to get some definition up here so they're not all just one big glob. Okay, get it to where you think you want your leaves, where you like them. If you need to add any more, if you don't want to add any more, we can always add more later when we're doing our next round, so that's okay. And then we're going to come in and do some texture over these with our texture brush. I'm going to go ahead and add Some more red to this. If you're using the low tint melting pots, the Miriam Joy pots, they would probably not need another crayon, but it'll make our life a little bit easier. I'm going to use half, and I don't think that'll come up too far. If you're dripping, you have too much wax, either just take a small cotton ball and barely absorb it, because it just sucks it up until you get to the point where you're not dripping anymore and you know you've got enough wax. Or you can even dip your tool in not as far down, so you have some options. Just take it and set it up on top instead of putting it all the way down. So we're going to take our texture brush and we're going to make sure he's really clean, because we're going back to a lighter color. Yep, that's hot. We're doing our dandelion again, and we're going over all of these leaves that we've done. Remember, we talked about 4 layers on this one, and I'm going to put quite a bit of dandelion in there, and we're just going to come in, hold on to that, and do this over the top of those leaves, if you can see that. Trying to figure out what's the best way to hold it so you can see and hold it that I can hold it. We're just going to come over the top of them, and you're just setting that yellow on top of them, building the next layer. So our next layer of leaves will be really, really red. And if you can tell, I've left open areas. We have some open areas. You want to see some of the branches. You don't want them all covered up, but not a lot, just a little bit. So there we go. Now that was easy, right? So go ahead and clean your texture brush out. We're going to put the red wax over it again. So on our next layer, we're just going to lay inside of the parts that we've already done. We don't want them to be exactly following the same leaf. We want them in different areas, but they're going to go on top. So let's go ahead and get started with that. And if you found that you needed to switch to the number 1 tool instead of the 0, I am just having a fun time with holding this today. I'm trying a little bit of experiment here. The little silicone, I wish we had the whole thing silicone, but a silicone glove would help hold that on. I did try my rubber garden gloves and they didn't work at all. But maybe just a smaller piece of the silicone mat is what we need. So we're going to go ahead and, like I said, we're just going to start doing next layer. We're filling in kind of where we were before and just working all of that red spot again. We don't want to go outside the edges that we created last time for our tree, because it would change the shape, and we've kind of got those in nice points. So we want to kind of stay within like that area right there. And you can see how I'm kind of going in between and around and about, and you can see that really bright red start to appear again. But we've also got that dandelion texture underneath, so it kind of adds to our leaves. So I'm just going to keep on working here and get this layer on, and we'll see you when we're done with this one. We'll talk about our next step. wanted to show you, this is the part I've done, and this is the part I have not done. And you can see that second layer is really adding depth to the tree. How much, when you had this over here, how flat it was, and now it's starting to really pop. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this. And I know sometimes it seems like it's taking a long time, but once you get the flow of this really goes fast. It does not, you know, mess around at all. Once you're comfortable just to kind of let go and free form it, your trees will do better, you will do better, everybody does better. So just kind of let go and go for it. And as you can see, my leaves sure are not perfect in any way, shape, or form. So we're going to add the dandelion leaves just to make it pop and add some more color. There's one thing I did wrong with this one. If you can see it, they're too evenly spaced out. You don't want them that evenly spaced out. That's not a good thing. And I really have to work with myself to make myself not do that. If you wanted to do the aspen tree and do another one and reverse your colors, use your dandelion as your base color and your orange or your red as your pop color, you could do that as well. You would have to really think about something that would stand out from these trees. And but there's so many things you could do. The dandelion, the orange, the red. You could even do the green. You've got summertime trees, so that is up to you. Did you guys know that aspens only grow 6,000 feet and above is the normal? So I took the rest of my dandelion. I put him in my little pot. If you only had a little bit, you could turn him, and I moved him up to the front so I could turn him like that and in that space. So that will, you can finish off the rest of your dandelion without grabbing another one or whatever color of yellow you decided to use. So let's just come in now and let's just fill in some spots. Think about where there might be a cluster of the yellows, the yellow leaves. And this is going to go real quick here. You're not going to have too much. You don't want to overdo it. Just filling in here. But it makes it pop. It gives it that extra pizzazz. I don't know. Something it needs. So that's the reason we want to add this last color here. And I am going to have to really, really work at not doing this evenly. Get those colors kind of close together. And I kind of splashed. So I'm going to take a minute especially while it's still warm, and just take that right off. I had another one down there, but that doesn't matter. That just looks like it belongs there. So we're going to put, like I said, we don't want to overdo this. We just want to have enough to make it pop. And you may decide it only should be in one section of your tree, not all over. There is no right or wrong. And we're almost done with our tree. Can you believe it? But notice the blue paint in our background. If we hadn't had that blue paint, it would really not show up as well. And each one of your trees is going to be totally different than your last one. So don't make yours look like mine. This is your tree, not my tree. And just have fun with it. Enjoy yourself. I know people that say, well, what am I going to do with it after I've made it? And I said, does it make you happy to paint or to do wax? to relax you. Do it for you. Don't do it for anybody else. Do it for you. Especially in our crazy world nowadays. I think I better stop before I muddy it. Just take a look and make sure there's places that I do or don't need one, but we don't want to do much more than that right there. So now that we've finished our gourd and it's all ready to go, we need to make sure that we varnish it. First of all, this is wax. This is an art piece. You should never put any piece of artwork in direct sunlight, and especially if it's wax. Do not forget that when you are varnishing. I am the biggest one to do this. I'll get a tree all done, I'll varnish it, and I'll go put it out in the sun to dry. And I just melted my tree. So think about those kind of things. You want to do it on a day where it's not humid. You can spray varnish this, or because this is not a dye, it's not going to run on you, you can varnish it by hand with a polyurethane or something that you're comfortable with. I probably will spray mine with like triple thick. Again, just be careful with your humid days. When you're spray varnishing, you don't want to turn it white. That is what happens if it's white, is because it was too humid and you used like a satin or something to that effect. But I would do 3 to 5 coats minimum. The more it's going to be handled, the more coat I put onto my gourd. I also came back with my liner, and I should have done this when we were doing the brown, and I signed it, and that is right there. And then after I was done, I glued it to a piece of wood. I think that just kind of completes that. You can hot glue that. I would also put an E6000 under it. The hot glue for short term, the E6000 for long term. If you wanted some pine cones down in here with some greenery, I think that would be really cute as well, and I may do that. But that will also, when I do that, I want to make sure that I have my tree standing up, not at an angle, and that may be where your pine cones or different things like that would come into play. So those are things to think about. I do not date my artwork until I sell it. The reason being is I found out years ago when I was painting that if you have a signature on a date on an older piece, people don't think it is worth as much. So I usually date it when I sell it. So that's something just to kind of keep in mind and think about. And that is our Aspens in Autumn. I hope you had a great time. Hope you learned a lot. Learned a lot about textures and how to stack the different wax layers and things like that. If you need any of the equipment supplies, from the wax melter to the tools, you can find them at miriamjoy.com. And as always, if you ever have a question, please send us an email at art@miriamjoy.com, and we will be glad to help you. As a professional courtesy, we would ask if you would like to teach the class that you obtain permission from art@miriamjoy.com. This is my only source of income. So thank you so much. God bless.